So I'm curious, here you are, you've been through a very rough patch, to say the least, and you start hearing this voice in your head. Have you ever had you ever had any sort of channeling experience or voices in your head or any of that sort of, you know, experience prior to this?
No.
Yeah. Wow. Did it shock you? It didn't shock you, scare you? I mean, it seems like you went
I
right
was a little
into.
frightened at first because some of the things I was hearing violated everything I had ever been told by anyone, really, my religion, the religion of my youth, or anybody in my adult life about God and about life. For instance, as an example, one of the earliest comments I heard was, "There's no such thing as the Ten Commandments." And I thought, oh my gosh, so
Here we
again,
go.
there's no such thing as right and wrong. There are no victims and no villains in the universe, and all these other messages I was receiving. And I thought, oh man, am I trafficking with the devil here? What's going on? What is this?
Right.
So I began to worry about what in fact was happening. But as I allowed the experience to continue, I became convinced that I had done what everyone is in the world is doing. They're simply calling it something else. Because God said to me, Neale, this is not about you. I talk to everyone all the time.
Mm-hmm.
The question is not to whom am I talking? The question is who's listening. But
Right.
people call it something else: women's intuition, a sudden insight, an epiphany, whatever they think they can get away with without having to explain, a moment of inspiration, whatever they want to call it. Because if they said, God told me this, they know that they'd be marginalized and ridiculed. So nobody says that, which is exactly why the publisher didn't want to put the book out by that title. He thought it would be ridiculed and laughed at, and it would sell like 25 copies. But in fact, it managed to reach more people than he expected.
Yeah. Pleasant surprise on his end, I'm sure. And it is bold, and thank God that you stuck by, keeping it the title, the nonfiction, etc. Because obviously it would have been a very different impact if it was sort of sent out there as a fiction, a work of fiction. So let's talk a little bit about your latest book, The God Solution. And in this book, you invite, there's an invitation for people to embrace a new global ethic based on a refined and clarified definition of God. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Thank you for asking. I should explain to anyone who's listening to this that this latest book, The God Solution, is not a dialogue book. I don't want them to think it's a question and answer dialogue books. There are 9 conversations with God dialogue books, but this is not one of them. I consider this book to be the apotheosis of the entire Conversations with God body of work. And because it encapsulates all of the major messages, the most important messages, what I consider to be the critically important messages of the Conversations with God dialogues. And I put it all into one book, and I called the book The God Solution, because I believe that it is the solution to the world's human-made problems. Not to, our natural disasters, hurricanes, tidal waves, being hit by a meteor, that kind of stuff, but to the problems that we are creating for ourselves, being created by ourselves. The human-made challenges and problems that we're creating could be solved if we simply took the advice that's offered in The God Solution. And you're correct in summarizing that point. The point I made in the book is that everything would be solved if we simply chose to redefine God. If we chose to define God in 2 words: pure love. And if we decided to move forward in our human interactions with that understanding that God can be defined with the words pure love, we would find many of the challenges and problems, the energetics and the emotional conflicts that exist between us as humans, melting away. But now I usually have, at this point, when I offer this point of view in a live presentation, in a live lecture, someone inevitably says, "Oh, Neale, come on. I've been listening to you now for 15 minutes, and for you to tell me that you think the big idea is that God is love. Everyone understands that God is love. I mean, all the world's religions may disagree on a lot of other doctrines, but no one disagrees about the fact that God is love." And now I have to say, wait, hold it. Relax. I didn't say God is love. It's not what you heard me say. All right, what did you say? I said God is pure love. All right, what's the difference? And I would say the difference is that pure love needs nothing in return.
Right.
Asks for nothing and demands nothing in return. So that you know you're loving someone purely when you have no self-interest in the sending of that energy. You're not loving someone because, you're in a tit-for-tat, quid pro quo relationship. I'll give you this, you give me that.
Right.
You're loving someone simply because you do, needing nothing and requiring nothing, asking nothing,
Not
even
transactional.
hoping for nothing in return, for the simple reason that you need nothing to come back to you in exchange for the love that you're giving. Now, if we decided that that was the ethic of God, if we decided that God was pure love, it would change our interactions with each other, because most of the world's people believe in a divine being. Recent surveys have shown, by the way, sociologists have taken a one-question survey around the world in the past 5 years. They went to almost every nation asking people, do you believe in a divine power? Do you believe in a higher power? And 8 out of 10 people said yes. They couldn't define it. They couldn't describe it particularly, but 8 out of 10 people said, yeah, we believe there is some kind of higher power. That is, there's more going on here. To use my words, there's more going on here than meets the eye. So there is a higher power. Now, when you have 8 out of 10 people believing that there is a God, what they believe about God starts to become fairly critical. Because if we believe about God that God is judgmental, condemning, and punishing, we will allow ourselves to be judgmental, condemning, and punishing with others, because after all, every religion in the world invites us to model God, to behave with each other the way God behaves with us.
Right.
So our attitude as human beings is, if it's good enough for God, it's good enough for me. So we interact with each other, nation with nation, people with people, races with races, genders with genders, age group with age group, economic groups with economic groups. We interact with each other from a place of judgment, condemnation, and punishment. That is, if you don't give me what I need to receive from you in this quid pro quo relationship, then I will judge, condemn, and punish you. Because after all, that's what God does with us.
Yeah.
But now if we change our mind that God doesn't do that, God judges no one, condemns no one, and punishes no one for anything, that is theologically revolutionary and sociologically revolutionary as well, because it would pull out from under us, would pull the rug out from under us, our rationale for behaving with each other the way we are.